Hey y'all, my name is Emma Grace McConnell, and today I'll be talking to you about one of my favorite anatomical structures, the pineal gland. When I first started to choose a topic for this assignment, I was really drawn to the glands in the endocrine system and parts of the brain. But when I couldn't decide what to do, I was like, maybe I should just find something that's part of both, because it is very, very fascinating how the brain and the endocrine system work together. I ultimately landed on the pineal gland because it fascinated me how it's such a small gland, but it does such an important role. The pineal gland goes by many names, such as the third eye and the seat of the soul. Now, what is the pineal gland? The pineal gland is a singular, highly vascularized gland that is part of the endocrine system. The pineal gland is located in the midline of the brain. To be more specific, it is right under the corpus callosum and to the right of the thalamus. If you look in this picture, the pineal gland is a really tiny blue dot. The corpus callosum is the big yellow part above it, and then the thalamus is the circular object with the smaller hole in the middle. Now, why is the pineal gland important? The pineal gland is super important because it controls circadian rhythm. Most importantly, the sleep and wake cycle. It does this by secreting melatonin by responding to light and dark. The pineal gland is the reason why you have to fight your body to stay awake if you try to pull an all-nighter to study. People also have to deal with the effects of the pineal gland if they switch to night shift, because before your body gets used to it, your pineal gland it keeps the circadian rhythm and your sleep-wake cycle, and is used to you going to sleep at the hours you did before and being awake at the hours like you used to. But now you are awake during the night and having to sleep during the day, and so that's why many people have to get blackout curtains to sleep during the day when they're not working, so they can kind of trick their pineal gland to secrete melatonin and help them sleep until their body gets used to the changes. Now, you might be wondering, how can the pineal gland do all of this by itself? Well, it really can't. The retinas are the first step to whether the pineal gland is activated or not. So the retinas are what take in the light. So they do this by the retinal ganglion cells. So these take in the light and interpret how much light can come in, and then it goes through a very complex process that I do not fully understand myself, but it converts the light that came in into a signal, and then this signal is sent to the pineal gland. The pineal gland then interprets this signal and decides whether or not to secrete melatonin. If the pineal gland interprets the signal that it is dark outside and melatonin needs to be secreted, the melatonin will be secreted into the cerebrospinal fluid, and then it'll enter the bloodstream. Now, there are many disorders of the pineal gland. Although the pineal gland is located in the midline of the brain and is fairly protected by everything else that surrounds it, including the third ventricle, it can undergo 3 major types of injuries. The first one is calcification of the pineal gland. So researchers have noted that as you age, your pineal gland undergoes calcification. However, it is excess amounts of calcification that cause the disruptance in the normal functions of your pineal gland. You can also have tumors on your pineal gland. Although this is the most rare disorder of your pineal gland, it is very severe and can cause pressure on your pineal gland as well as the surrounding parts of your brain, and can be very, very painful and cause symptoms such as like headache and things like that. And the tumors are detrimental to your pineal gland because they can push into the third ventricle, and then which restricts it, and then they will also push into the cerebrospinal fluid. And so if your pineal gland does still secrete melatonin, the melatonin cannot be secreted into the cerebrospinal fluid and into the bloodstream like it was before because it is restricted. You can also go under a traumatic brain injury, and this can damage your pineal gland. The severity of a traumatic brain injury on the functions of the pineal gland vary. So, for example, if you just kind of bump your head, like on your headboard as you go to sleep at night, it won't do as much damage as, say, somebody fighting in war who ends up surviving a gunshot wound to the head. Those will be two very different impacts to the pineal gland functions. So healthcare professionals can determine which issue you have based on imaging. For example, if they think you have calcification on the pineal gland, they'll do x-rays, whereas if you have something more like a tumor, they'll do MRIs or CT scans. But 9 times out of 10, your first step of figuring out if you have an issue with your pineal gland is going under blood test, because they'll check your melatonin levels in your blood, and if they're abnormal for what they should be, like for the time of day, then they'll know whether you have a pineal gland issue or not. Now, some interesting facts of the pineal gland is that it was the last endocrine gland to be discovered, and it is the least researched endocrine gland. And part of this is due to it being the last gland to be discovered, but this is also due to it being such a tiny gland that is kind of like trapped in the middle of your brain. So there's not really much research that can be done on the pineal gland that won't affect something else. And then the really cool part to me is that they're using the pineal gland to look into Alzheimer's. Some scientists have brought up the hypothesis that the excess amount of calcification on the pineal gland is actually what leads to Alzheimer's. They believe that there is a correlation between melatonin secretions being decreased and the onset of Alzheimer's. So these are my references for the information used in my paper and on the slides. The references for the photos are underneath the slide itself. And in conclusion, the pineal gland is just very important for maintaining circadian rhythm and homeostasis within the body, and it interprets light and dark to know whether to secrete melatonin or not, and tell your body if you should go to sleep or if you should stay awake. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation and it taught you about the pineal gland. And I hope it left you as fascinated as I was when I first learned about the pineal gland. And I am very excited to see everybody else's presentations.